today's video, we are going to drive long bed Larry. We've got a ton of stuff to get done so we can do that, so let's get started. No, that's fine. Now we have to figure out where we're going to mount some of our fuse boxes and all the other electrical stuff that I'm going to install. So before I show you all that stuff, I'm going to make the panel for me to mount all that stuff. I've got some cardboard here that I've made up, and I'm going to have this come just like that. It may not make sense just looking at it right now, but let me go cut this out of metal, get everything all done, and then I'll show you the final product and how it's going to work. So I got this finished up. I even painted the back of it, and let's just say we're going to call this version 1. I'm not quite satisfied. I used 22 gauge steel on this, and it's a little too flimsy. It warped a little bit when I welded, and there's a few things I actually want to tweak about it. So I'm going to redo this with 18 gauge steel. It'll be much more solid and should work out a little bit better, but I really do like the overall design so far. I think it's going to work really well. So, all right, here is version 2.0, and it turned out really, really good. I'm glad I went with the thicker gauge metal, nothing warped. It's really sturdy, so we don't have to worry about it, you know, bending and stuff with the weight of the things we're going to have on here. So really worked well. So I want to reemphasize, I know some of you guys are going to say you want measurements or you want the plans for this thing. I don't have them. I literally just made this up. This is what you have to do. Get cardboard, map out how you want your electrical components, cut the piece of cardboard out. Any other additional pieces like this part, I had to cut a piece of cardboard out, and I just made it fit how I wanted it. Then you guys saw I made the first version and it worked okay, but again, I learned a couple things that I wanted to do better on it, and I wanted to use different gauge of metal. So this, even though it was money down the drain, it was very good because it helped develop the final product, which we have here. All right, we've got everything mounted up. Let me bring you in a little closer and I'll show you exactly how the wiring is going to work with this panel. So this is what we have here. We're going to have our battery obviously right here on the battery tray, and from the battery our positive terminal will be right here, so we'll have our main power supply coming off into this 150 amp breaker. So if we flip this breaker, all the power to all the truck shuts off. Now coming out of the bottom of the breaker, we're going to have our main power wire coming to this bus bar. So this will be a constant power bus bar. So we'll hook things like the grid heaters, the alternator, things like that up to this. Now off the bus bar, off of this stud, we're going to bring one power wire up to this fuse box, and we're going to bring one power wire over to this solenoid. So this fuse box will have fused constant power. This is where we're going to do our fusible links down here. and then we've got a negative bar over here, a ground bar that we can use as well. Now over here, this solenoid is what's going to allow us to make this whole fuse box keyed power. Now keyed power is important for a lot of things, especially aftermarket gauges and many other things. So this box will be completely keyed power through this solenoid. I may modify some stuff as we go, but right now this is the general layout of what we're going to go for. Alright, so let me show you where I'm at. So I've got the grid heaters right here to our bus bar, which is constant power. These two right here, they're both red wires. I actually had them to constant power. They're for the starter solenoid. But I was doing some research and looking at some diagrams, and I believe they're actually supposed to be fusible linked at 30 amps. So we'll have 3 links at 30 amps, and then we've got 4 left over here. 3 of them are 40 amps and 1 of them is 60 amps. There's our duck foot. Put this in my collection of duck foots. Duck feet? Yeah, collection of duck feet. All right, we are making really good progress. So we got all the fusible links hooked up. So I'm going to tell you real quick, I've done a video on the fusible links delete, so you should go watch that if you're going to do this project. But just in review, it's the red wire with the white tracer that goes to the 60 amp fuse. The pink, the red, and the black one go to 40 amp fuses, and then the little tiny pink one goes to this 30 amp fuse. So remember, the goal for today's video is to be able to drive the truck. So we have a lot of other little things we got to get installed in order to get to that point. Here's a few things we need to get installed. Our AC compressor, AC condenser, alternator, intercooler plus piping, radiator, turbo, as well as the downpipe. So I'll show you all the details on that. I'm really excited to show you a few of the details, especially on the alternator and the turbo. They're sweet products. So let's just start knocking stuff out. So for the AC condenser and the Power Stroke intercooler, I'm going to be following Tyler Ovens at Ovens Garage. His video on this is phenomenal on how to install this. So the first thing we have to do, we're going to notch out this just a little bit. We have to cut all of these mounts off. So let's get to that point and then we'll keep progressing. If you really want the details on what I'm doing, go watch his video. I'll link it in the description below. So I've got my AC condenser. I got this from Rock Auto. These are super, super hard to find. I don't know how Rock Auto had one, but I ordered it and it's correct. So I want to mount it like this. These tabs though are barely gonna have enough bite to mount it right here onto the core support. So what I did, I cut out these pieces. I'm gonna put it right there, weld it in. That way we have plenty of bite to mount the tabs to, and the intercooler will still fit through right here. Okay, don't look over here. All right, so we got the core support all painted back up, got our AC condenser and our Power Stroke intercooler mounted up. This turned out really, really nice. Now let's get our AC compressor on and then our turbo and intercooler piping, and then we'll be pretty close to driving this thing. So here's the alternator I went with. This is from PA Performance. I'm sure many of you have heard about these, but this is a one-wire alternator. So here it is, and by that, basically it is what it is. You have one power wire that has to come from a 12-volt source. That's it. Now there was an option, which I opted for. There's a tack signal lead, so we can hook our tack up to this and get a signal straight off of that. So let's get this thrown in, and I've already got a power wire run for it that I put in the loom, so this should be really easy to install. So here you can see my power wire, so I'll just put a eyelet on there. Might have to trim this just a little bit, but That's all it is, one power wire. This goes all the way around to the other side. So that was an easy install. This is about 350 bucks if I recall what I paid for it. It's expensive, but it's worth it. We'll do all of our gauges when we do the interior though. We have our tach, pyrometer, EGT, and boost gauge. So that's all installed. Let's get to what you guys are all waiting for, the turbo. So the turbo I decided to go with is the HX Super 9 from Savage Fabrication. This is a turbo that I have had on my bucket list for years. I've always wanted to run it, so I figured Long Bed Larry is the perfect opportunity. So this is a modified HX35, I believe, with a 9cm exhaust housing. What I've heard is it spools super quick, EGTs are pretty low still, and it's just a great all-around turbo. I've heard of many people saying they prefer this over compounds. So let's get this thing installed. I've got studs on the exhaust manifold. Oh baby, that is sweet. All right, so for our intake tube, I just ordered a 24-inch, 3-inch piece of aluminum. So I got the charge pipe over here installed as well. For this one, I just ordered a 24-inch piece with a 45-degree bend in it, and I had to cut a little bit off of each side, but it went in nicely. These vibrant boots are awesome. I would link the parts to these intercooler piping and everything in my description of the video, but I'm gonna give credit where credit's due. Tyler Ovens did this install video on this Power Stroke intercooler along with the charge pipes. I'll link his video in the description below, and he's got links to everything in his video. Now we need to get the downpipe put on the truck. So this is just a typical HX35 downpipe that came with the truck. That means it has a 3.5-inch outlet. Now when you order one of these turbos from Bradley at Savage Fab, he'll ask you if you want the 3.5-inch outlet or the 4-inch outlet. So on mine I ordered the 4-inch outlet because I knew I had one here sitting around in the garage right here. So this is one that basically we just have to grind this one off, weld this one on, and then we'll have our 4-inch downpipe and we can install that on the turbo. I think we're about ready to drive this thing. I got the fan shroud, the radiator all installed. I've got a bunch of other little things buttoned up. All right, my plan at this point was to insert a clip of this thing just firing up and me pulling it out of the garage and driving it. But that's not the case. I've run into an issue. Let me fire it up and I will show you. Watch the reaction of the truck when I try and fire this up. That's what it does, and I'm giving it plenty of throttle. Even with throttle, it just putters out like that. Sounds like it's running on 2 or 3 cylinders, and it doesn't sound good at all. It's a couple weeks later. That issue took me a long time to figure out and the help from a lot of good people. But we finally got it figured out. I checked the timing, made sure that hadn't slipped. I checked the lift pump, changed that out. I've reprimed the system, I checked a couple other things, and I still couldn't get it. But it turns out the fuel system on this is really hard to prime with that stock mechanical pump. So I ended up having to get some pressurized air, shoot it into the fuel tank with the bleeder valve opened on the fuel filter, and that way it pushed all the fuel up through the lines, got it to the fuel filter, closed that bleeder valve, and then I bled the system and it fired right up. Luckily, it was an easy fix. Unfortunately, it took me 4 or 5 weeks to actually figure this out. So I think the truck is ready to go. Let's fire it up, pull it out, and take it for a little drive. Well guys, we did it. It runs and drives, it shifts really good. Now it's important to know I don't have the rear drive shaft in, so to drive it, I've got the front drive shaft in and the transfer case in 4 high. I've only got part of the exhaust installed, so we still have a few things there to button up, but by the end of the next video, this truck is going to be done. I'm gonna paint it, I'm gonna finish the interior, button up all the details. This truck will be done by the next video and we'll be cruising down the highway. I thank you guys for your support and your patience. I hope you're enjoying this long bed Larry build. We'll see you guys in the next one.